Jeremy wrote into us, no last name. So let's say Jeremy Roenick of the Chicago Blackhawks. He wrote in and said, "Greetings, gentlemen. In the year of our Lord 2021, various people are still bringing up Gamergate and using it as a boogeyman for irrelevant things. Colin is someone who was in the industry at the time, and Chris, who was an active spectator. Dustin is here as well. Why does this still keep getting brought up outside of the original purpose all these years later? Is this just leading to a Gamergate 2.0 with a bastardized message?" Dustin, I'm curious why we're even talking about this still. And then I realize that it's because it comes up where people do feel like they need to make this comparison to this event, which is so weird. You're seeing it actually with the stock thing.
Yeah.
Right?
That's exactly
which is
what
like, I don't even really understand what Gamergate was anymore. I mean, I think I was in the industry at the time. I feel like I had a grasp on it. Then I really feel like in revisionist history has kind of made it into something it really wasn't. And I don't know exactly what it even means anymore. What do you think about this persistence of this term and this kind of nebulousness surrounding it?
So from what I've gathered, especially with today, like you mentioned, and it being brought up in this stock situation, is that Gamergate seems to be brought up by the industry more than anyone else, and always being like, this is the remnants of Gamergate. This is how this is connected to Gamergate. And it's always grasping at straws. It's like, why is everything connected to this event that no one can really... I mean, there are clear events that we can talk about with Gamergate, right? But overall, it's become very ambiguous, and somehow everything is related to it. So I don't really know to sum up everything I'm saying. I don't know.
Gamergate is brought up whenever the internet does something that is concerted. Like whenever a lot of people on the internet gather together to do a thing, that is essentially Gamergate. And it depends on, like, it's only Gamergate when it's like viewed as like controversial. Like if they're tanking the stock exchange because a bunch of people on Reddit decided to gather together and do it, that's Gamergate. But if a bunch of people gathered together and, like, I don't know, raised money to fix like a fox, like an Inari shrine in Japan because they played Ghost of Tsushima, that's not, because that would be a positive connotation of concerted, of people on the internet gathering together and concerting their or consolidating their power into a single thing. And I don't know, it's just become a boogeyman. I think largely because I think it's a lot of different factors. I think it's the way that media sensationalized it in the first place. I think it's the way that the algorithm of YouTube back in the day would kind of propagate it in a specific way where, you know, Gamergate was just ultimately, like, Gamergate was a hashtag. That's literally, ostensibly, like, and functionally, that's all it was. It was literally just like a, hey, this thing is going on in the gaming industry and people are complaining about it. Let's throw this hashtag on. Because I've seen videos with the hashtag Gamergate on it that have nothing to do with anything. Like, even I did it back in the day. I would just throw that hashtag at the end of videos just because I knew that people were searching for it. I was like, hey man, SEO is king, and I'm doing what I got to do here. But, you know, I think just between, and by the way, maybe I shouldn't say this, but there are people behind the scenes who were prime victims of Gamergate who are pretty tired of having their situation related to, like, everything that ever happens since it's happened. Like the idea that people are like, Donald Trump or like the Capitol siege was Gamergate. I saw that too. That was a take that I saw. The Capitol siege.
That's a take, dude. Ooh. And I gotta leave after that take.
And listen, man, the people who you are presumably defending don't like that. Like, they don't like thinking that, like, something that happened to them is solely responsible for the crumbling of society and, like, and massive historical events. Like, nobody wants to feel that way, and they're not happy about it. And just don't do that. It's been dead for what, 7 years at this point?
Yeah, it's been, yeah. I mean, I was going to say, I have such a clear memory of when it was all happening because it was at the end of my time at IGN, towards the end of my time there. But I went for my 30th birthday. I went to Kentucky that fall to go to some bourbon distilleries, and I went to, like, this nice dinner in Louisville. And I remember, like, one of the guys that I had met there was like, "So what's this Gamergate thing?" And I remember being like, even at the time, I was like, I don't want to talk about this. And it really did become this amorphous thing, because you were saying one of the things that's interesting is people don't want to relive their trauma. I absolutely understand that. I also feel like on the other side are like people that want to relive it over and over again because that was their shit. Like not only people that were the attackers, obviously, but people that were, I would say in some way more so sometimes, the people that were victimized by it because that was like their time in the sun, their ability to get attention to their causes or money, raise money for their projects or whatever. So yeah, I feel like there's like some sort of reason to go back to the well, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's when it's a claim to fame, regardless of, especially when it's a claim to fame that's completely amorphous, that people really can't even remember all that clearly. Like I barely remember it, you know?
Right.
But like, dude, man, it's been so long. Just put it to bed. Even back when that was happening, I remember being like, oh, we're doing the Watergate thing. Like you're just putting gate at the end of it.
Yeah, it doesn't even make any sense.
Like, you know, it's the internet's just, I have a feeling like I always have this thing in my head where it's like aliens come down and they land. It's been like millions of years since humanity's last breath, and they're scouring through the wreckage, and all they find is just hashtag Gamergate.
Oh shit!
Because it's
like a Prothean ruin.
Yeah, like nothing. Like it just never dies. It's wild.
Yeah.
Well, and I think.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dustin. Go ahead.
Sorry, just one other thing that I just quick thought is that I think part of the reason why it never dies is that it's easy because like the common thought is that Gamergate equals harassment and all the negative things, right? And I think that it was mostly that. I'm not arguing saying that there was. I mean, there's so many sides to every story.
Yeah, I think over time, eventually it became like just like a complete shit show of just like people attacking people for no reason.
Right.
And that's,
so now anytime someone speaks out against games journalism, whether it's true or not, it's like so easy to just be like Gamergate. That's Gamergate stuff. You're supporting Gamergate. It's like, no. Like it's just like an easy shield, right? To be like, oh, that's harassment. That's Gamergate. It's like, no, come on.
I'm of the mind. I've said this on publicly, so it's not like a news story, but I remember being at meetings at IGN where we were trying to figure out like, how do we respond and what do we do? And my whole thing was like, just ignore it. Like everyone should just ignore it so it goes away. And I feel like people just couldn't help themselves. And it just, you know, the Lee Alexanders and the Brianna Woos and all these people of the world. And then on one side, and then like all of these, you know, degenerate people that, you know, I'm not saying everyone on either side was degenerate. I'm just saying there are a lot of fucking assholes on the other side. And these people just couldn't help themselves. And they catapulted this thing. It's another example of what we're talking about, actually, of like almost crowdsourced energy. I remember being scared that they were going to come after me. And I don't even remember, like, for no reason, because I remember feeling at the time like, wow, this is a really organized mob of people that are coming for people. And then like over a few weeks, you realize like, oh, who gives a shit, you know, like, let's move on with our lives.
Yeah, I remember early on, like the biggest concern was like, hey, you know, just recuse yourself from writing about people that you know, or at least like make that public knowledge, because that was like initially like one of the things, because there were a lot of articles that were written about friends of people that they weren't transparent about that information, and I remember that very clearly. And I remember when a lot of those sites, Kotaku and like all these other sites, like they updated their, I don't know if terms of service is the right word. The code of they updated.
It's like a code of ethics or like a style guide. Yeah.
Yeah, they uploaded them. They updated them in accordance to what the criticism was. And I remember being like, oh yeah, all right, well that's it then, you know. But then people like kept running with it, and then it was just all right. Well, then it's not about this thing anymore, is it? It's just like any hashtag. Hashtags go off the rails all the time. Like there are people who like you could see, you know, BLM hashtags, right? And you could agree with the sentiment, right? But then like every now and again, some psycho is going to use that hashtag, you know? You can't police that.
No, you can't. That's the other thing is like just guilt by association. I believe in your freedom of association without necessarily being judged for that as well. So it became a lot about like degrees of separation. I got sucked into all that shit later on. So it does suck. But I was going to ask, how many people, like what percentage of people do you think that use the term Gamergate don't realize why Watergate was called Watergate? Like, do you think that some people think Watergate was called Watergate because like, I'm not saying they think water was gated. I'm saying, do they realize that it was just the name of a hotel and that the gate suffix has nothing to do with anything at all?
I would wager most people, I would wager the majority of people don't know that specific thing, but I would wager that like a decent amount of people understand that Gate probably doesn't have anything to do with specifically a controversy. I think it's just a useful suffix on the internet specifically because it's catchy. It's so catchy that this thing that hasn't been relevant for half a decade now is still brought up. So
Biden Gate. That's gonna be the next. That's gonna be the next one.
God. Help us.